I'm doing the
You
intro.
want to do the intro?
Yeah.
Welcome
Rolling.
back to 2 6-Packs and a Mic, guys. I am your host, Ananta Zaman.
I'm
As
Neil Shah.
always, we have Neil Shaw, Tim,
Gonna
No description.
no description.
finally, the king of the school, the king of SGA, the esteemed Nick.
The God.
I forgot to figure out how to pronounce his last name, but welcome, Nick.
Like a
Thank
big
you,
God.
Very glad to be here. Alright, so yes, this week is kind of a special episode. We're diving into a serious topic for once.
We're gonna be entering the conversation about mental health at TJ. Nick, why don't you start us off telling us what SGA is doing to help improve and what ideas you guys have come up with to improve mental health in our community.
Yeah, so I'd say the biggest thing that we started doing is having more meetings with administrators, teachers, school social workers, and school psychologists to just talk about mental health. So this is the first year that we've had those meetings with all the different stakeholders of our community, just at meetings dedicated to just the topic of mental health. And from that, we've come up with a lot more ideas. So one of the ideas that we came up with was just, making mental health resources more accessible to students. We lost a school psychologist at one point. Now we have one. Not everyone knows that. So an idea that we came up with was just having a tab on ION that lists all the resources. It'd be primarily the school social worker, Ms. Armstrong, the school psychologist, Ms. Barkat. Just a reminder that your counselors are there, your teachers are there, your peers are there, and also the number for the National Suicide Hotline and crisis text, which are both resources that anyone can use and are very easy to access. You guys want to talk about that? Or should I just keep on?
I
can
have a
keep on going.
question about these meetings. Like, how often do people that aren't related to SGA show up? Like, what's like the engagement with the student body at these meetings?
So I could check real quick, but there's actually surprisingly high engagement from non-SGA people. So on SGA, I'd say around 4 people who are really more dedicated to mental health, right? Because SGA does a lot of activities, a lot of different policy. So I'd say there's 4 main SGA people who work on mental health, Johnavy and Ethan being the most active. But the thing is, there are a lot of students who are passionate about mental health who aren't on SGA or are in other organizations like TJ Minds Matter, who come to these meetings. So I know at the first meeting, I only can make it to the first meeting, but I'd say that there are around 4 other students who are not on SGA, in addition to around the 4 SGA students who came. And I'd say that's a pretty good turnout, actually, better than at our other meetings. And I think that's really because mental health is something that every student is concerned about in some way. And that's why we have a mental health group chat on Facebook. That's where you basically talk about mental health or respond to crises. And that group chat is predominantly non-SGA people. So mental health is just a topic that is really easy to involve a lot of members of the student body.
What are the objectives of these meetings? Is it to collect student experiences, ideas, or can you just give us an overview?
It's basically to come up with solutions to address our mental health problems. So at the start of the year, we kind of came up with 3 different goals of the committee. So one of them was, so I remember the biggest goals were just communicating resources and ensuring that there are support systems and really making sure that every student had an adult or a person who they could go to.
How would you make sure of that?
So there is really no way to ensure that, but there are different programs or initiatives or movements that we could work on to bring that about. So for example, one thing we were talking about is just having teacher put up a sticker in their classroom or put up a sign on their door, just a sticker, say, symbolizing the mental health movement at our school. I know that other schools have done that, and that just kind of starts a conversation between the teacher and the student. Like just encouraging teachers to have a conversation with their students about mental health, even if it's only for a minute. I know that we asked teachers before winter break to do this to their students, and just like an email sent out to all the teachers, and a number of them did have conversations with their students about just, this is a hard time, this is a busy time, make sure to like be aware of your mental health. Like you can reach out to your friends, you can reach out to me if you ever need something to talk about. And we also had SGA members present to freshman IBETs about the different resources. So just kind of continuing some of these ideas, maybe having that sticker just to kind of create a more school-wide movement that everyone can participate in.
Well, I guess like we have hundreds of people at the school, and if these meetings are only 8 people, like what's kind of like the way to move forward and actually get more people involved in this movement?
I think the way to get more people involved, I mean, one way would just be to communicate more. You know, I mean, that only will get so many people, but SGA meetings are open to the entire student body every single block. Unless all 4 of your blocks are full every day, you can come to SGA with a mental health concern and we will discuss that with you. And whether or not you can make it to that meeting, we'd be happy to bring it up. Another, I guess, way to involve more of the student body would just be, I think just having maybe an online Q&A. I don't know. Just a time where, I was kind of thinking about this a little earlier this year, but just having a time where like I or another SGA member could just be live on Facebook, for example, or something like that, and be fielding mental health questions or suggestions. Just kind of creating an opportunity for students to talk to us that isn't just 8th period or these after-school meetings, I think would be a good idea.
So do you think that students talking to SGA directly is easier than talking to administration or their counselors, for example, with their ideas? Because I know plenty of students have voiced their concerns at that like higher level as well. What do you see as the difference between those two?
Okay, so personally, I think the good thing about just coming to SGA or coming with SGA to these meetings is that it's just kind of more strength in numbers. You know, if you go by yourself to an administrator or a counselor, right? Like sometimes they could pass your concern up, but like what we're really trying to do is come up with solutions. So if you raise a concern, I mean, someone has to figure out how to address that. Like you could bring it up all the way to the top and they can hear your concern, but the place that we can address those is these meetings, like when we're face to face with administrators. Because, I mean, if you think about it, they have so many responsibilities apart from like working on student policy, student mental health policy. So just, I think if students really would like to voice their opinions, like, I think coming to us during a meeting would be helpful, just because we would be, like during those meetings is really, I'd say, when the most change happens. Because if we don't have that time, I mean, it's easy for, just in the bureaucracy of it all, for it not to get addressed. I mean, we just see that in our regular government.
Is this for like students looking to find help, or more just to like try to voice an opinion and try to bring about something change?
So for students to find help, I'd say, like, you should be able, if students are looking for help, if you voice your concerns to your counselor, your teacher, the school psychologist, the school social worker, any of them will address it in some way. But I also want to emphasize that you can talk to any of your students. You know, there is a student who reached out to one of the TJ Minds Matters officers that they were like struggling and needed some help. And they talked to that student, they made sure they were okay, they communicated to them all the mental health resources, etc. So I think that really anybody, as long as you communicate to somebody that you need help, like they will, like humanly, like, I hope that they'll have the human decency to respond, which they should. For voicing your concerns, you can do that in multiple ways. I mean, I think what really happened is, like, what we've noticed, that there's the most change when a larger number of students all go to the administration or figure of authority with like the same desire. Just because then it makes it very clear to them that like it is an issue, and that students generally agree on a course of a solution. Because sometimes they might just think, you know, this one student has this idea, but how do we know like that this is the best way? Might be a little confusing, but I just believe that like just having students, like I mentioned earlier, just kind of come together, discuss, come up with solutions, bring it up at these meetings, then we'll just be much more prepared to come up with solutions.
Okay.
So I guess looking at like present solutions, I guess we kind of agree that like having the peer-to-peer communication is really key to helping solve this. So what's like a way that our community can like move forwards with trying to create more of that?
Yeah, so just one of the ways that we would do that is just having, like I mentioned, the sticker. Like it wouldn't just have to be a sticker, but like starting a movement, having like a week. You know, we have Stress Less, Laugh More week. We could have another week that's just, you know, more dedicated to conversations about that. And part of that would just come from the teachers or from student government going around to other students and talking about that.
Is there a way for like
students to talk to
find students?
Well, part of that, to like find students to talk to.
That they can like rely on, or like a safety net, or like people that they know well and can feel comfortable talking about it with.
Yeah, so we're thinking of a couple of different ways we could do that. One idea that was just recently brought up was having like a senior from the same IBET as a freshman assigned to that freshman, and they'd be like their senior, I guess, peer, or like senior, I don't know,
like
their mentor, I don't know, something like that. And just, I think the Big Sibs program is good for helping students transition into TJ, and I know that they've really done more this year to make sure that Big Sibs and Little Sibs connect. But often, you know, after this student, you know, goes in and makes their friends, like the Big Sib really loses touch. You know, having this kind of like designated system, I think would really reinforce that like you have this senior throughout the year who you can talk to, and then that just continue.
So just to clarify, this is an idea floating around. Would this be like mandatory for all seniors and like freshmen who say opt in? How would you, like, it sounds to me that it would just be an extension of the Big Sib program that's already in place. So like, whereas with Little Sibs and Big Sibs, it's kind of like introducing the uniqueness of TJ, like some of the different intricacies, whether it be like busing, you know, catching. Like I know when I had my Big Sib, for example, they taught me like this is how you actually like found your bus, because he told me how big of a mess it was, for example. And that, like, it honestly was super stressful for me in the beginning, and it was super helpful. But like in this context, this Big Sib, what would they be helping them with? For example, like dealing with like the workload, or it seems to me like there's a lot of overlap between Big Sib and with that program already.
Yeah. So we haven't actually, like, we just really brought this up at the start, but you know, it could be like there is a chance that it could be a separate thing, you know? I mean, Big Sibs, I mean, I have 2 Little Sibs, and I basically interacted them a lot at the start of the year, answered their questions, and then I reached out to them when they're selecting their courses and was like, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I see them around sometimes, I say hi, but that's really the extent of that. So if this program, say, were separate from that and was advertised more of like, if you need someone to talk to about mental health, you could talk to this person. That brings up the concern though, like, is that because it'd be mandatory, like, is everyone educated about mental health?
Yeah.
So for this really to go through, like, I know other schools have training programs for, say, like, peer-to-peer, like, support networks. Like, we could look into that, like having a session. I mean, this would take some time from seniors, but having a session.
Do you believe that we should like take class time out for these sort of programs?
I think that is actually a really good point, because earlier this year we were talking about like implementing a school program called the Positivity Project. That basically we'd have to take some class time. Anyway, I don't want to get into the Positivity Project completely because it's not really worth it, but it wasn't really mental health, it was more character building. And basically taking class time. I think, what school did this? I think Jeb Stewart, aka Liberty or whatever they are now, implemented this program, and they had these basically study hall block times that they put towards this. And I was thinking that that'd be good to have a program like that, but more focus on mental health. The thing is that, like, we proposed some of these programs to the administration, and I mean, they weren't really that enthusiastic about some of them. And the other part is that it'd just be a lot harder to, like, we don't have like just study hall blocks. Like,
well, like the administration like talks about like trying to get culture change, right?
Yeah.
And like adding programs like that's like not directly academia, but still about educating people and building people, or like shaping people, I think is important if they want to go through with it.
And there are skills those programs teach that are outside of just like learning about mental health and helping people with mental health troubles. Like, that is a brilliant step in terms of communication, which is another goal of TJ.
Because originally it wasn't
body
just
can't-
mental health, right? For the Positivity Project.
So Positivity Project. So like, if we want to get a little more into it, so really our stance was mainly against it, just because, for example, there are these like 24 qualities, like creativity. I honestly, that's the one that really stuck out to me.
Okay.
It's creativity and the other 23 different qualities that, like honesty, integrity, or something like that. Resilience. There are these like 24 some number of traits. And every week you'd basically do a lesson that would help you develop these traits. And I remember that one of them was like, for creativity, it's like one of the lessons at Jeb Stewart was like, you have to create your dream house. Like one person, like each person has to add something to it.
Okay.
Like the class is divided into two, like each person adds something to it and then they compare it.
So
not all lessons were like these.
Okay.
But it was mainly like during the time they were mainly doing like kind of fun activities that were related in some way to these traits.
So it's like not that productive, is what
We
you're
thought that first of all, I mean, really developing character traits, that happens when you're in kindergarten. Like at this point, you can improve upon that, but doing these kind of fun exercises are really just, I think the only benefit would be to have fun.
Okay.
That you're not doing school.
It seems like a distraction, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm sure students would like it, but the thing is that, like, I don't think it'd really solve anything.
Okay.
But see, I can just like inject my opinion here.
Yeah.
My big problem with how we've been sort of addressing mental health at the school so far is that it just seems very manufactured almost, right? Like the example that sticks out to me personally is, I think like every Friday, Miss Armstrong comes over the intercom at the beginning of 5th period and does her whole like, mind wellness thing, right? And I'm gonna be honest, 95% of the people, probably close to 100, 99, right? Treat it as a joke, right?
Yeah.
Like they either like zone out, don't listen, they don't really care, right? And it was a really, really great effort. It was an effort from the school to try and address a problem that people had been complaining about, right? But just the way there's this really big disconnect between, us as kids sitting in class versus the person over the intercom. Whereas there was, I think, one class period in English where our teacher recently just, stood up and just like, oh, hey, come talk to me if you're feeling down or whatever. And then she sort of gave us like 10 minutes in class to go around and tell everyone, or just like talk and tell people, hey, you're a friend. I appreciate you, right? I really, really valued that because it just felt more natural, right? And it didn't feel like she was sort of shoving down wellness down our throats, right? And one of the other big things at this school which helped me is the community, right? Like, I came as a Froshmore, for those of you in the audience who don't know, and there was this one time on TJ Events that some other Froshmore made a post about saying how they were lonely at lunch. I wasn't the one who made the post, but a guy from my hum reached out to me over Messenger privately and was like, oh, hey, did you make this post? If so, we have a free spot at lunch. You can come chill with us, right? That moment really, really stuck out to me because it was natural, right? It felt more organic than the freaking voice over the intercom. And it just showed me that, hey, this school really does have something to offer me. That plus 8th periods.
Oh, yeah.
Too, right? Being able to go to a place every Wednesday and Friday and talk to people who have a shared interest in something that I love, right? Away from, like, class, away from the normal work, being able to develop, like, you're talking about creativity, right? In several of my clubs, like, I'm just going to say CubeSat, right? You're sort of inherently developing your creative skills by working on literally building a satellite, right? Instead of having someone come over to you and say, hey, build your creativity, you're doing it organically. I feel like that's a way healthier way of developing these relationships and really making your own support system.
I kind of want to build off what you were talking about earlier about like what feels natural and just because I know a lot of people like they say they're like they'll go on Facebook and they'll post like, oh, hey, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm kind of skeptical like how much does that actually help. And what you talked about is not just saying that you're there, but actually being there for someone, not just saying, oh, I'm here, but like going up to a person who you think might need it and like actively looking to help instead of just saying you can help.
So the question becomes, how can we foster that kind of attitude?
Yeah.
And there's no natural way to do that.
Because I think a big part of it is it's hard to find someone that you trust and you're comfortable with to come out and be open about these topics.
Yeah.
And like if there isn't like some sort of friendship or some sort of like you knowing that person to build off that relationship, it's really hard to talk about these issues at that level where you're not that close of a relationship. And being the one to open up first really helps the person help reciprocate and open up as well. I think that's kind of like a type of mentality, or at least a habit we should try to develop somehow.
So basically, like, two things, I guess, is one, just, would you say giving students more opportunities to connect, and two, fostering this, like, culture of reaching out?
What was that thing from before? It was like the same boat, not cutthroat.
Same boat, not
like
same throat, not cutthroat.
like,
see, part of it. That's a really good question. So, as for like the creating opportunities for students to just do more fun things, I mean that's something that I've just tried doing more this year, like having a Halloween contest thing, having a trivia night. Just we're planning something on May 4th that's like Star Wars themed. Like having just like a pizza party day or a school breakfast during Stress Less Laugh More. Like we can do that. Like I think that would help students like spend time together and do something fun. But that doesn't necessarily translate into the kind of culture where if someone, like if some random person, right, looks like they're struggling, someone will come up to them. And I think that there's, I guess, an easier and a harder solution. Like one thing we could do is just like organize an event. Like I mentioned this a little earlier, just having like a school-wide Secret Santa type thing and having the event and basically giving that as an opportunity for like the people to exchange gifts and just hopefully have a conversation or saying like, okay, like during lunch we're having this event or during X time in the day, and like after you exchange gifts, like have a conversation with your person. That's just like one random idea. But I think the really like root problem of this is just the excessive workload. Like just between me and some of my friends, like when I've been really busy, like I haven't been able to spend as much time with my friends or talk as much with them, or just really even like reach out and meet new people. Like during lunches, like I'll be studying instead of spending time with my friends. And I think this culture of prioritizing work over friendship has developed and really kind of hurts just this culture of connection. So, I mean, I really think a lot boils down to this, but just not making TJ like hard for the sake of being hard, but making TJ like more lab based. Like instead of making Bio 1 AP Bio, like make it cover everything in base school Bio 1, but utilize the fact that we have these labs. Like make a more lab-based curriculum where you don't weight assessments as heavily as like lab projects where you're working with somebody. I mean, that was an idea that I brought up a number of times, but just at this point with a new principal, like Dr. Bonatadabis, like, and I respect this decision, doesn't want to make any like giant changes right now. I mean, it makes sense. Like if it's your first few years on the job, like you first need to understand the problems and you first need to understand how everything works before you implement this. But I think that's one of the more root problems of like why students struggle to connect, and we all live far apart from each other, right?
Yeah. I think the natural idea or the natural aspect of the solutions, I think that's the most integral part of it. Like for example, the sticker the sticker thing that you were talking about. Like, initially when I was first hearing that, it seemed a little superficial. But again, it's the idea of just like making sure that students know that they can have this conversation with a certain teacher. And I understand that, but then it seems a little forced too. Like because teachers, I don't think some teachers wouldn't really wear that as a badge. They would they would feel I don't know what's a way to put it.
Like some teachers would be able to give a conversation about mental health much better than others. I guess some would be able to make it more like a conversation, whereas others would make it seem like a lecture.
And it seems like when this is just one idea, but like when every teacher is just forced to wear it, it loses its meaning. Because it's like, okay, yes, we're just showing that the teachers are there to talk to, but then what was really the point of that? It's not like I didn't know that.
And it kind of becomes like the meditation thing.
Exactly. So, and that's one aspect. But like I liked your ideas of just increasing communication between the school just by making more events, because that is exactly the most natural way to just increase engagement between the body. I think another idea. You talked about starting another week about mental health. One of my main criticisms that I've talked to about my friends with the mental health week that we have this year is that it seems like every day is like dedicated to like you should sleep more, you should stress less. Like again, it's like forcing that when people don't often have control over that. Whereas if we have a week about communication, like you were mentioning, that's exactly that. Even if you're forcing the communication, as long as something gets out, like communication's a little bit different. Like starting a conversation, making someone speak is a little bit different than making someone like or it's different than telling them to do something. Because when you're speaking, even if you're doing it begrudgingly at first, I feel like eventually almost anything will open up if you're speaking to the right people.
But like, it's hard to just walk up to someone and talk about something.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
like,
I wouldn't walk up to a stranger and be like, "Tell me your deepest, darkest fear," and
That's
all.
like-
And
Oh, of course not. So like, for like my thought about the communication week is, for example, like TJ students love venting, not just on the Facebook page, but in general, in person. It's how we band together as a student body. So if a teacher just like, hey, tell me what's up, like what Mr. Auerbach does. I love what he does. He's always like, so what's up, guys? That's how he starts
Yeah.
every single one of his math, or not every single one, but most math classes. He's like, what's up? And it always boils down to something wrong with the administration, something wrong with some teacher, like some freshman or sophomore complaining about a project that they have, or anything like that. And then everybody, sophomores, juniors, or freshmen, kind of, if there's a freshman in the PC class, they're just kind of getting even more afraid. But we all kind of just band in and be like, oh yeah, that was hell. And it's that kind of, I feel like that's what fosters resilience, because that, hey, people have gone through it.
It kind of gives me an idea of just Tim. Was it your Lulu's? I remember that in our health class we had to do this like fun activity. Yeah, it was Lulu's. And her activity was basically like you're given this word. And you have to like vent about it for as long as
that game,
and
I
Timmy
love
was given like
I love
Dutch
that
oven
game.
and he didn't even know what it was and he's like Dutch ovens. I mean, something you brought up in the past was just like teacher roast. I don't know, but
Teacher, okay, maybe.
that's like a different direction. But I don't know, just
taking
like
it too far,
Comedy
I think.
Central's teacher roast.
but
Oh,
something
man.
like, I guess just, I mean, students venting.
We'll wrap.
Like, yeah, I guess that's just an interesting idea, though, of like just having an event. Like, having an event where students are forced to talk is kind of difficult. Just because, like, when in the school day are we going to do that? Like, during lunch, a lot of people have their thing. During 8th period, a lot of people have their 8th period that they sign up for. Like, what we could do is make it more of a, like school-wide pizza lunch thing. Just random idea. But, like, do this at this, like, event.
I have like a question. Like, so for some of the activities, it's like fun things to do, but like, how much is it self-selecting? Where like people who want to go just go, and then people who should go don't end up going.
I mean,
Because like,
that's
if
the
you have
thing,
friends
like,
there, that's the biggest motivator for you to go.
the thing is, like, then you get into the whole thing of, like, if we make it mandatory, then you're shoving it down people's throats. If you force a discussion about integrity during 8th period, then people just more get annoyed that you're taking up their 8th period slot. So that's kind of a struggle. Like, how do we have these discussions? Because administration and teachers don't want to give up class time. Like, we don't want to give up our lunch or 8th period. Like, one of them really has to go. And I think that needs to be recognized when we're doing this. I mean, in a really, like, I think we should talk about, like, what would this look like? Like, what would this discussion look like? You know? Like, would it be a school-wide thing? Would it be more broken down into a counselor thing? A class thing? Like, just a day where in everyone's class you talk about mental health? Like, a day?
Yeah, I mean, that brings up the point, like, who are we trying to get it, like, whose heads are we trying to get it through? And it's the students, after all.
Everyone.
It should be everyone, but I think when we're focusing on the student body's health, I mean, the teachers, they kind of affect it greatly, but
Oh yeah.
I feel like that's, like, with all these events during 8th period and lunch, like, they're for the students. So I feel like giving up that class time is not taking away the students' time, even though it would piss off teachers. Of course, it would be harder to get pushed through administration to get that done. I personally feel like that is the way to go about helping students.
But I still feel like there's a natural way of doing it. right? Like, you're talking about sort of how, with the whole, like, creativity thing, people should have developed that in kindergarten, right? And... Oh, wait, you want to check the...
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's definitely the video is
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just reset it.
People should have developed that in kindergarten, right? Well, think about it. Who do you go to when you have a problem, right? Do you go to the person who shows up on your feed and says, "Oh, hit me up," or do you go to the friend who you've talked to in class or in his period or in whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Let's be real here. It's going to be your friend, and I feel like you shouldn't necessarily go to classes and say, "Let's have a discussion about mental health," right? We should make teachers aware that there are ways that they can help students, develop connections within class, right? I'm gonna shill again for, my experience, electronics, right? We would have lecture days, which made up like a quarter of the semester, and then the rest of it would just be lab time. Open lab time, where you could just work with your circuit, develop it, and talk to others about their designs. And that was really, really helpful, because in that class, I made really good friends through working together on building stuff, hearing about other people's ideas. It wasn't our teacher saying, "Oh, go out and make friends," right? It was a bunch of people coming together with a common interest, right? And just being able to develop that. So, I see the value, right, in maybe making people aware of their mental health, but I still believe that the less, like, actively you try to do it, right, the better it will be for the people in general.
For example, what if the teacher, like, that discussion was phrased as this way, like, what do you hate about this school? I think that would produce the most natural conversation the classroom could ever
We
have.
talked about like having labs over tests because
Yeah.
people work together on something opposed to just
Yeah.
working
Yeah,
for
like,
a
I-
grade or a score.
Like, okay, so this is kind of off topic, but just a quick thought, like, is this culture that we have to, like, that the teachers too, like, have to make it hard / we have to cram all this information into this class? Like, some classes, like what you described in your classes, sound great, but there's some classes, like, not to throw anyone under the bus, but I love Dr. Osborne, but like his math class, like there's not going to be time for this like open discussion without feeling like you're getting behind.
There's also
but-
like AP classes too where there's literally
For,
a
like,
test.
yeah. But I think if it's like, you mentioned your English teacher spoke, like let you talk for 10 minutes. Like, I think that's an interesting idea. Like, if we do something once a week at least, where you have 10 minutes, like, instead of taking those 10 minutes maybe of, like, reading the meditation thing on the morning announcements, say you take that and you can either have, like, a different activities that, like, one example, like you mentioned, just, like, talk about XYZ or talk about your break. Something like that. Maybe, I don't know if that's like kind of getting at what you're thinking.
Still feels a little forced.
It just
Yeah.
it feels, but
Like, you know what I'm saying though? I mean, if you just tell kids, hey, like you have 10 minutes, talk, like kids are gonna talk to their friends.
I mean, like our English
Like, I
teacher
don't-
was more specific. It was like tell someone something you like about them, right? Or
it
like
was
something.
Was it
kinda
something like that?
Yeah.
So like, if you don't think that's forced, then
It's kind of from a different context. When your teacher is saying it in front of a class of like 20 to 30 students versus the PA telling it to the entire school.
Yeah, no,
right,
I
like
agree.
it was the difference between Dr. Bonatata sending an email to the teacher saying, "Oh yeah, do this activity," versus her seeing what's going on in the school and saying, "Hey, take a
Honestly,
bit of
that's
time to talk."
You think she should just pop into classrooms?
No, she should, yeah, like sending that email and telling teachers to each give their like class 5 minutes to just talk to
Okay.
each other instead of like blasting it on loudspeaker. It makes it seem more personal. It seems that it's not like an effort of the school to like manipulate, or not manipulate in like a bad
No, but
way.
I'm saying the exact opposite though.
Oh, really?
You didn't like
felt,
the email.
It did not feel like she had gotten an email or that she was being told by like SGA or something, "Hey, do this." It was natural, and that's what I'm trying to get at here, right?
So I think it'd be interesting if like, do you think, what if, have any of your teachers just said like, what do you think about mental health at TJ? Like, have you ever had a discussion like this in your classrooms?
The psych teacher has talked about stuff like that.
Huh?
Like Mir.
That makes sense, but like, that's an idea. Like, what if the discussions every Friday, like instead of, like, it's just kind of like what's forced, what's not, what works, what doesn't.
Like,
It's
trying to
like a
have
fine line.
policy isn't gonna help if the people aren't gonna change, and I think we need to change as a whole. Like students, teacher, administration, there needs to be like
Holistic. Just everything is.
just you need to have a mindset that's different.
So what do you
And
think that
that's-
mindset would, like, is the mindset like a more compassionate mindset? Is that what you're thinking? Or more aware of the problems? Or like, what were you thinking with that?
I'm thinking just like you should try to like see beyond just yourself and what you're doing and see that there's other people around you who are going through the same thing, and that
And like
you can be there for them as much as they can be there for you.
fostering that empathetic nature, though, that's something that.
Like
It's
like
hard
having a
'cause-
secret, like we were talking about, like having a straight up Secret Santa where you just buy something is very impersonal.
Yeah.
Like Ms. Armstrong kind of came to us and was like, what if people could like make something
Oh, I
and
like
give
that.
it to someone?
Mhm. Did you put
Like,
thought into?
You put thought into it, and also it's like you might have to describe what it is to the person. It's not like you just give it and leave. And that kind of like led to having 8th periods where you can like sculpt or do some artsy thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like, would people go to that? Like, that's the other thing. Like,
I mean, you
Here we-
started the sleep thing, right? Did people go to that?
that's the thing. Not many people did. Last year, it was actually going okay. I'd say there were like at least 10, 15 people per meeting.
Is this rest and relaxation?
Yeah, rest and relaxation. The thing is, though, like this year, like it hasn't been running because not enough people signed up for it. And what happened was Ms. Armstrong created this rejuvenation activity,
Mm-hmm.
which I was like, what? Because she created, I think it's great that she created it this year. I've never been to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how it differs, but I mean, that kind of gets back to our culture here.
Because people,
Like,
if we're giving
people
options
won't.
and people aren't going,
Like, if we're giving the option for someone to sleep during a period, like, it's kind of a little different. Like, she basically reads to you, like, these passages,
Mhm.
and it makes you fall asleep. Like, that's how it works.
Oh,
Is that
okay.
yeah?
Like,
That's weird.
it's like, you think that at first, but she just, like, reads in this very soothing voice, and then a bunch of people end up falling asleep. And I guess the way that just help is, like, you get more sleep. Like, you can relax for any period.
Mm-hmm. I guess,
But
like 8th period is like it's like opportunity cost.
The
Like, 8th
eighth
period is a
period
time,
is-
and people want to spend that doing something. Maybe
people act, like, I can see why people would want to do something more active.
or like no,
Or,
not
like,
necessarily
some time
that,
with
but like
friends
there's a
or-
pressure to achieve something with your 8th
Oh,
period,
that's true. Like,
and
there-
that's
I mean, that is a point. So, like, that's just the problem with our culture at this school. And I really think,
but like
like this desire to achieve.
I think it's a bigger problem now, not just TJ. Like if you look at
Oh,
college,
nationally in colleges, like, I mean, if you just look at national scores, like on standardized tests, like national admission rates,
Mhm.
like scores are going up, admissions are going down.
Yep.
I mean, like, as a nation, it's just getting more competitive. And I was thinking, like, there are external factors of that on TJ. There's also, the internal of, like, Nova's. I mean, you look nationwide, this is happening. Then you look at Nova. Like, Nova's a very competitive region. And then you look at TJ, which is, like, the most rigorous school in Nova. So, everyone's gonna want to achieve. Like, you can't really take that away. You just really need to. It's like helping people be aware of when it's going too far.
Because like nobody's an adult yet. Like this
And
pressure.
I also think that you shouldn't take that sense of competition away because it's
No,
fostering the right
I
attitude.
wrote about
is it?
it's like
Coping with
competition, like, can be a good thing,
Okay.
but when there's like excessive competition, it becomes harmful. Like,
What would you define as? Sorry to interrupt you, but what would you define as like excessive competition in this case?
I'd say excessive competition is when you're just taking a class,
Good.
like you're just taking an AP sophomore year because everyone else is. I'd say, like, healthy competition is when you think, you know what, like,
You just love doing
I'm gonna,
this,
like,
and you
I
wanna
like
do-
doing this.
Mhm.
You know what, like, my friend's taking this class, I like this topic, I'm gonna jump for it. Versus, like, oh, I have to take an AP sophomore year. AP Bio it is. So many kids, I mean, I went into Bio willingly, but I know a lot of people who, like, were kind of pressured into doing it. And, I mean, I don't blame them. Like, just some of the conversations I had with, I mean, looking back on freshman me, I was a lot less aware of this. Like, everyone talking about, like, are you taking AP Bio or AP CS? Like, no one thinks about, like, electronics, robo, proto. Like, there's just this unhealthy competition where it's like the quest to the most APs. Like, I get so annoyed because it always comes back to the same, like, conversation of, like, so many of our problems just get to the point that, like, TJ is just, I guess, too hard for lack of a better word, but, like,
It's the challenge that it brings that
It's
is
just-
the root of the
it's
issue.
just like how
But
you,
like,
you can't take.
what's the goal of TJ? It's a public charter school. It was created.
The goal of TJ
for
is to
science
get.
and tech.
It's like to get. It's basically to produce scientists. If you think about it,
Okay.
like, they can say it's to inspire love of STEM. I mean, it's to create scientists. And personally, like, I'm still going to do STEM in college, but, like, TJ has scared me off from STEM a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Just, like, associating this competition, this, like, super stressful environment with STEM can lean people towards humanities. I mean, I've spoken to a number of friends and graduates who've said that, like, in college they just didn't do STEM for a year. So, I think, personally, the whole AP grading, like, the whole AP class thing, like, in order for your class to be AP, you have to get your curriculum, like, approved by the AP
The college board.
board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or else it can't be called AP Bio.
What happens if they just took away the
So,
weighting from all the
but-
classes?
Look, if you think about it,
That
like,
was-
right now, we're trying to do AP Bio, so we have to cover all of this. We're also trying to do TJ AP Bio. Like, it's just too much.
Mhm.
So my ideal situation would be that you just don't, if you don't have APs, and you just have, like, TJ Bio 1, TJ Bio 2, it's kind of like TJ Math 4 or 5. I mean,
Is it like research stats?
it's sort of like if TJ has its own classes, right, that they can make, where you do more labs, you cover, like, the same amount, like, you cover what you need to know,
I like
instead
that.
of just covering what the AP board tells you to.
Because like the whole
it ruins that label that people are trying to jump for. Like, they don't care about the content, they just care about that.
Exactly.
the goal of a
So
charter
if you
school
take
is
away-
to try new things.
If you take away, like,
Yeah.
and
so
like,
we talked about taking away your GPA, which I think is, or, like, taking away weighting from
Yeah,
a GPA,
okay.
which is a slightly different thing, but kind of along the same vein of that, right? Like, taking away the weighting. Like, the goal of that would really be, like, kids don't take classes for the weighting. I mean, I guess colleges would still see, like, it's called AP this, but you wouldn't have that weighting. I mean, parents are super against it.
Really?
They're very against that because, like, if you make it non-AP, right, and you make it Bio 2, well, all of these other schools have AP or IB. What are we doing for college, right? There's, like, that fear that going to this, like, TJ-based system is going to hurt their kids for college admission.
But it's going to make TJ more unique.
Yes.
And you still can just take the test if you really want to take the test. I mean, the goal, I know they do this in DC, is like charter schools are meant to be different, to like experiment.
Exactly.
And like this year has just been standardizing everything, and that doesn't help fix the problem. The goal is to be different, to see what works, and if it doesn't work, to try new things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I really do like support that idea. I think it's the way you described it. I agree with it 100%. Right, giving teachers the freedom to create their own curriculum, you know, to teach what they need to teach, get rid of the whole AP, get rid of the weighting. I support that.
Get rid of College Board.
Get rid of College Board. The problem for me is that, like, this is an example, Physics 1 at the school,
Okay.
right? I've talked to people at base school. It is comparable to AP Physics 1, right? We can agree to that, right?
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah,
standard.
whatever.
Yeah. When you're applying to a school like, say, Virginia Tech, for example, and they look for that AP next to the physics class that you've taken. I have a lot of friends who took Physics 1, right? But because it's missing that AP label, they think that, you know, Virginia Tech just like, yeah, it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, like
They're
I think-
expecting you to have
so,
an
like,
AP.
They're expecting you to have.
But if they just know that
But
TJ
if-
doesn't do this.
I'm wondering if that'll change things. Is my question.
Oh, sorry for like. cutting you
Oh,
off.
I see that. So I see what you're saying. Like, if we don't have that AP, if we just had, I guess like AP would be, let's say like TJ Physics 2. So you think like if they don't see that, they just won't like be able to check it off. That's
Or, I mean, other school. If we're talking about physics specifically, base schools offer like full years of AP, or not AP, of physics. You have Physics 1, then you'll have Physics like 1 and 2, or like 1 or 2, and then you have Physics C. So it's not 3 years. Sorry, it's like
3 options.
3. Wait, let me remember how this works. I talked to my base school friends about this like last year, because while I was taking physics. But yeah, in light of, so they have 2 options for AP Physics. They have one that's calculus based and one that's still like basic algebra based and like just overall concepts. But it still teaches like it doesn't derive the formulas the way a calculus based class would.
So it's kind of like how there's like multiple AP Physics tests. There's one that it's with the extra thing and the one that's without the extra thing.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a reason for that, is because they offer a class that is without calculus, and TJ doesn't offer that class. And that, it's not like, I'm sure Virginia Tech looks at those classes differently, but the people who took that AP Physics class without the calculus would still have a better chance of getting in than the people who didn't. So maybe like adding more options to TJ, because
Yeah, personally, I think it's like the average. So I was at a meeting last year where they gave us like all the class averages, and I think like in the 2 classes that had like the lowest averages, like the average was a B, and like by average I mean like that was also tended to be the mode, like
okay,
The-
yeah.
or no,
The median.
I'd say, I'd say the median, yeah, the median. It was like a B. Like that's basically where, if you looked at the grades, there were like very few A's, like an A minuses, and like many more B's and B pluses. Like that was TJ Math 4 and Physics 1. So the question is like, well, for Physics 1, my question was, why? Like, I mean, technically, like if it's below a B, that's when they start intervening. Because there's this whole thing like, oh, you guys freak out too much. Like a B isn't that bad. But
He's good at grades.
so what they said though, when I was like, well, still, why don't you make it easier? Is because, well, students self-select into AP Physics, right? So you're automatically looking at like not as good of a pool for physics students, which is not representative of like the whole student body. I mean, that's the thing. Like, how do you fulfill the mission of TJ to like where it's a rigorous school, right? Like you're not just gonna teach base school physics 1, while also not forcing like you have to take physics 1, right? Like while also not forcing students to take a class that they won't be prepared for.
But I guess like there's lots of kinds of STEM, and having all the STEM classes be hard, I mean you have to be good at all the kinds of STEM, which nobody will ever do in real life, right? Because people specialize.
That kind of goes like, should physics 1 be required? And physics is a very important science, but at the same time, like going into junior year, I was like, I mean, I know physics 1 isn't going to be my favorite class.
Well, I'm of the belief that I think everything should be required when it's like that fundamental to like job or career paths, because you could have loved it. I know many people who have like hated like the first part of physics, but then some kind of unit was like super intuitive to them, and then they fell in love with it, and then once they realized that they had a chance of grasping something at physics, they put in the effort to get even better at like the units that they struggled with. And like I don't want to say I felt that way about chemistry, because I struggled a lot with chemistry. But then, like, and then especially with like acid bases and all that. But then there were certain parts of it, like with the electron configurations, that I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about, 2 years after the fact. But when I was taking it, it was fascinating to me, and it fostered an interest. And I think that especially at high school, when everything is free, and well, I mean, taxes fine, whatever, but like you're not paying direct tuition. I think you should force your students to get like a diverse education to a certain extent.
I think that's like the argument for a core curriculum, which makes sense. Like
but
in this,
but then of course options, or that's how you allow students to specialize and actually pursue their interests.
I agree.
You don't restrict them.
I just guess, like for me, so I just really liked chemistry. Like that's my thing. Just when you look at like how these classes are taught though, like are they being taught to like develop an interest in this subject? I think sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Like AP Bio, I can say definitively is just cramming. Like that class, I went into that class really liking bio, and I came out of it just thinking like bio is just memorizing. Which is partially true. To be like, if you want to go into like being a doctor, like, you need to memorize a lot of stuff. But just that's kind of gets back to like more lab based. And I think physics 1 actually, like believe it or not, did a good job, like a better job than most with doing labs.
I did terrible on labs.
Like that's the other thing, but. Like at least you're doing stuff. Like I really think the whole, the Canet lab.
Yeah.
Like I think that was great.
That was fun.
Like I think there should be more labs like that. Like where you have to like solve a problem, but apply your knowledge.
And you see your knowledge actually like come
and you see it
bear
actually,
fruit. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one thing I want to touch on there. Like you mentioned like how to figure out whether a class is being taught to teach or just to. Or to like, how'd you phrase it?
Yeah, I think it was like whether you're like the teachers are teaching it to develop a passion, or just like here's the information. Yeah.
One, I think the best way you can figure that out is if it has that AP label, because suddenly you realize they're just doing like it's taught so you pass the test.
Art history.
Okay, I'm sure there's some exceptions like AP Psych. I've heard is like that. I've never heard of a single student. Actually, no, I've heard of one who didn't like Psych or AP Psych. Every single person I've talked to that took like a semester Psych was like, oh, I wish I took AP Psych. And then every person I've talked to that's taken AP Psych, they're like, oh, that was a great class. Okay, fine. AP Psych is an exception. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, it's being taught for the test because that's what the teacher is going to be eventually.
Exactly.
Like art history,
judged
like
upon.
you have to cram because there's hundreds of pieces, but everyone is there because they enjoy it, and like Mrs. Panzik loves it, and everyone loves it. So even though it's very difficult, everyone's like cares about it. So like you get that like feeling.
And having a passionate teacher, like it immediately like you absorb some of that passion. You get like excited. And that's super important. That's something that I don't think we have any control over whatsoever, though. But maybe we should reel things back in a little. Does anybody have any like final thoughts, or do you want to?
Well, just so like what we talked about was like I think a fundamental thing is connection. Like if you feel you're connected, then you feel like you can reach out to somebody if you're struggling. Like the question becomes, I think almost every student has at least like that one person that they talk to, right? Yet so many people still struggle with like mental wellness. So like is having that one friend enough, you know? Like even if we have these opportunities for people to like come together and talk, like they could just talk about school, whatever they talk about, go home and be struggling. So it's like how do we bridge this gap, you know? That's kind of what I want to know.
Well, if you ever find a solution or if you ever have any ideas, there's so many options for you to get your ideas out there. I think we talked about that quite a bit. So please do. I've never been to a meeting, but I think I'm going to check one out before the year.
I think we should communicate that more. I mean, part of the struggle is that it's like only an hour, and there's so many people who want to share their opinions, but
We also talked about like having a live Q&A, right?
like a live Q&A, like I would be open to that definitely. And just really like for cultural change to happen, it takes time. And I really am not sure like if any of the students here now are going to like really be there for like what we're trying to get at.
I guess like
it takes a long time.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like what. Sorry, I'm opening everything up.
We're just
But
taking baby
it's
steps.
like-
right?
Yeah, we're taking baby steps. Like we need to know what's leading us in the wrong direction and try and steer away. Like.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, Nick.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you
Very
for
interesting
inviting me.
perspective
Fantastic.
this week. And till next time, I'm your host, Anant Zaman, and we will see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.